Kathy and I have talked to each other about in the last year. If Jesus Christ was actually raised from the dead, if he really got up, walked out, was seen by hundreds of people, talked to them, if he was raised from the dead, then you know what? Everything's going to be all right. Whatever you're worried about right now, whatever you're afraid of, everything is actually going to be okay. Because you got to remember, we're not just talking about resurrected people. Jesus Christ is, and this is where Christianity is unique, we're talking about a resurrected world, meaning there's plenty of other religions that talk about a future afterlife, which is a non-material world. In other words, you get a consolation for the world we've lost. Christianity says it's not just your bodies are being resurrected, but the world is actually going to be a material world that's cleansed from all evil and suffering and sin. And if Jesus Christ was raised from the dead, then the whole world is going to be, in a sense, resurrected, and everything is going to be okay. Everything. You don't know how. I don't know how, but it will be. So, and you know what? Actually, right now I couldn't possibly be convinced that Jesus was not raised from the dead, either intellectually or existentially. So whatever. And by the way, but Kathy and I, listen, we cried. We cried a lot last night. Sometimes the reality of the shortness of what we have left here just overwhelms us, and we were just weeping together and crying. And then you say, if Jesus Christ was raised from the dead, it is going to be okay. And then you can wipe your tears, but you don't stop crying. It's like salt in the wound that keeps the wound from going bad. That keeps the wound from getting infected. But it doesn't mean that until the end of, until we actually meet Jesus Christ, we still have our wounds. So they aren't going to be healed. But they'll be healed by his.
Look. You gotta move. You're blocking the screen. Here we go. This camera. Can you move down?
Would you like me to look
here?
Ironically, the thing that people are most hungry for, meaning, is the one thing that science hasn't been able to give them.
Yeah.
Come on. It's like you're saying that science killed God. What if science simply revealed that he never existed in the first place?
I think we're gonna need these man.
What?
And a few more of these.
Thank you. Whew. It's a little chilly out here.
Yeah, this is nice.
I got one for you.
What do you got?
Occam's razor. You've ever heard of it?
Occam's razor. It sounds like some slasher movie.
No, Occam's razor. It's a basic scientific principle. And it says, all things being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one.
Makes sense to me.
So what's more likely? Thank you. An all-powerful, mysterious God created the universe and then decided not to give any proof of its existence. Or that he simply doesn't exist at all. And that we created him so we wouldn't have to feel so small and alone.
I don't know. I couldn't imagine living in a world where God didn't exist. No. I would want to.
How do you know you're not deluding yourself? I mean, for me, I need proof.
Proof. Did you love your father? Your dad, did you love him?
Yes, very much.
Prove it.
I shouldn't even be talking about this, but Powerball.
There we go. You should. Maybe not talk about it.
You're on camera, dude. Back up.
Carrie, oh, sorry. That camera. Oh, it's not that on you.
What movie was that?
Contact.
Oh, yeah.
It was not the clip I wanted to play. Rhonda wouldn't let me play the clip I wanted to play. Which we'll get to. I will discuss it. But first off, Carrie, thank you. I wish I had the hair that Cotter and Washington and Horshack and Vinny had. Right, they all had great hair, so anyway, but thank you for that. Tim Keller's a fool. What you just listened to, he's a fool. Right? Really, the man is dying of cancer. he says, a belief that God sent his son to the world to be killed, to save mankind, and resurrected from the dead is the most ridiculous explanation you can make for having a religion. It's just silly. And for him to say everything's all right because of that, come on. That doesn't make any sense. Tim Keller died. He left behind a family. He left behind a congregation of thousands. We've lost his writings, which are brilliant, his podcasts, which are brilliant, his sermons, which are brilliant. And he says it's all okay because Jesus was raised from the dead. Make sense? Okay, now listen. The way this is going to go the next few weeks, this is not Phil standing up here lecturing. This is an intellectual, spiritual discussion. Because before we get to Romans, and I had all intentions of starting this week on Romans, you have to get to the point, does God exist and does it matter? Because Romans kind of takes, and Paul deals with it in the first couple chapters, the supposition that God exists, but then he moves totally to a discussion about Jesus Christ. So if you can't get through this question, forget reading Romans. It doesn't make any sense. Right? God's got to exist. Karl Marx said this: religion is the opium of the masses. Powerful statement. He said it because as he was looking out over his communist rule, he was looking at the poor people who started to move toward religion, and his point was they're moving there because they can't handle their own life. So Tim Keller, who said, brilliant man, says, look, my wife and I cried all night, and it's going to be okay because I believe in Jesus Christ. That's his opium, according to Karl Marx. That's where he gets to a point, I can accept this horrible thing I'm going through, and I'm putting my family through, because I believe in Jesus. And Marx says, that's silly. That's just how we have conjured up into our head that there's a God, and that somehow makes it all okay. You guys aren't going to like me today. But if you don't understand these concepts of what the world thinks, we can't ever be effective in how we communicate what we believe. And so that's what in the next few weeks we're going to talk about. Two things. So I said Tim Keller was a fool. My mom always told me don't ever call anybody a fool, because the Bible says don't call anybody a fool. But in Psalms 14:1, David says, He who says to himself there is no God is a fool. Right? He gets into the fact that, man, if you say there's no God, you're a fool. Now, he's not talking about intellectual foolishness. He's talking about spiritual foolishness. That in your heart, you don't believe there's a God. Now, Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, all of us have eternity within us. Which is why David writes this in chapter 14, verse 1 of Psalm, saying, if you're going to deny what's inside of you, which you know there's a God, you know there's an eternity. If you deny that, you're a fool. And then the second scripture that I want us to keep in mind is Isaiah 1, verse 18. It's an interesting verse, because Isaiah starts off his book, or his writings, he's dealing with a time when Judah has gone off the rails. And they've started worshiping other gods, and they're doing all kinds of things. And God starts to send a message saying, I hate the stuff you're doing. I don't like it. I hate your festivals. I hate your sacrifices. All of it is a stench to me. And he's basically issuing a decree, and he says, wash yourselves, cleanse yourselves, remove your evil deeds, learn what's good, pursue justice, correct the oppressors, defend the rights of the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. We can get all kinds of social stuff here, but we're not going to do that today. But that's what, and then he says this in verse 18. He says, come, let's reason together. Come, let's settle this, some versions say. He said, let's deal with this issue and talk to me, because we're going to explain what we're doing. We're going to talk through it. We're going to reason this out. So what I love about that scripture is this: God's not afraid of doubt. He's just not. And we're going to talk a little bit about what causes us to have doubt. But he's just not afraid of it. He's like, come on, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. Let's deal with these issues that you're dealing with. And the story that came to my mind as we were studying this was the centurion whose daughter was about to die. And he goes to Jesus and he says to Jesus, can you heal my daughter? Will you heal my daughter? And Jesus looks at him and he says, do you believe I can do it? And the centurion's response is really important because he said, I believe, but help my unbelief. Right? In other words, he had a measure of belief. And he's like, okay, I believe it, but man, I got a lot of things I don't understand or believe. And you got to help me. And as we go through and you think about tragedies in your life and things you don't understand and things that have happened, you go, okay, Tim Keller, I'll believe that Jesus Christ raised from the dead and everything's okay. But man, there's sometimes I just don't believe. If you don't have a measure of doubt, and Tim Keller wrote this, not having doubt is like a body not having antibodies. The antibodies have to fight off the infections. And he's saying, even if you're a Christian and you don't have some measure of doubt, you got a problem. Now, I was raised a preacher's kid. And Rhonda was raised a preacher's kid. And I think she would agree with me on this. We were raised, you don't really doubt. Right? You just accept it all by faith. Oh, we did that. I'm learning this new program, so bear with me. So there's 3 barriers that come as a result of our faith. There's 3 things that cause us to begin to have doubt as to what our faith is like. Number 1, intellectual. Whoops, sorry. How do I go back?
Just hit the back arrow.
Back arrow.
Yeah.
Intellectual. How do we intellectually question faith? It's not rhetorical.
Science.
Yeah, you look for specific. Proof, right? That's why I love that clip that I showed, which is, you know what, give me some proof. If anything, science proves there is no God. Right? That's what a lot of, we'll get to that point here, probably not today, because we're already behind where I want to be. Okay, I need proof, intellectually. What else?
Well, there's logic.
Logic. Makes no sense. Let's accept for a second. You can get to Genesis 1 and 2, because this is where it all starts. Right? Genesis 1 and 2 are the most important, my personal opinion, important chapters in the Bible. The problem with Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is the first verse. In the beginning, God. Okay, let's accept there's a God and that he could create, and we get all into that, but then the next question always is, but who created God? You got an answer for that? Nope. We don't have an answer. We just have to accept by faith. We'll talk about that in a second. Number 2, personal. I just personally don't believe there's a God. And then number 3, social. I was talking to a lady in the class I taught before this, and she said that she's been witnessing to a colleague, and he said he was raised by a lawyer, fortunate for him. And I can say that for you new people because I am one. And he said, my dad just told me, don't believe that crap. It's silly stuff. So whether it's you were brought up not believing, or your social circles don't believe, or what your friends don't believe, whatever, socially you come to the conclusion there's no God. Which of these are the hardest barriers to break through?
Personal. Personal.
Whoa, all kinds of answers. Why? Okay, those of you who said first one, why?
Intellectual,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I guess I feel like the moment in our culture puts so much, not trust, but whatever, in our enlightenment and our reason and all those things, that it's like you have to kind of swallow what is actually cultural. And that it's so prized, and we think so highly of our ability to see and understand everything.
I think this is an individual answer, because based on personality, or it could be anything. Some people make logical decisions, some people make emotional decisions.
Yep.
Rejection of the supernatural, their inability to grasp that that's possible.
Who said personal? Okay, why? Here.
Because people are so very broken and stubborn, and a lot of I mean, if you seek out intellectual reasons to believe, I think you can find them. But the personal reasons are so ingrained and so deep, almost like, fundamentally part of who you are. They're innate, it's based on your upbringing and your personality and all those things put together. It's very difficult to reverse that.
What about social?
I think that's a real issue for people. I had a conversation with my 22-year-old a couple days ago. And she thinks if she walks closer with the Lord, she will lose friends. And she might, but that's a hard thing for someone that age to swallow.
So Wayne and I had an exchange after I heard Wayne Jr. last week. If you heard Wayne Jr., he talks about turning his life around, getting rid of pot, getting rid of alcohol, going back to school, and his friends were, and my question was his message that my friends didn't really reject me. And they kind of didn't, if you listen to him. But that is a huge issue, right? Am I gonna get rejected? And we can talk about it in the context of 22-year-olds. I'm gonna be 60 in February, thank you. And it's still the fear of rejection.
Yeah, Wayne, how many friends have you lost?
Oh, yeah.
But that is the concept here, that all three of these are at place. Now, the problem with the church is this, is we fear the intellectual concepts, and we just want to just jump into faith. Right? Let's just bypass all of these three things. You just got to accept by faith. Sorry, you intellectually can't get behind it, you personally can't behind it, socially you just got to accept by faith. We miss it by doing that. Right, we totally miss it. So on January 2nd, sorry, dadgummit. January 2nd, we typically in the Appenzeller household take our Christmas decorations down pretty close to after Christmas Day, if not the next day. Right? It's like Christmas is over, Jesus came, get rid of his stuff. But unfortunately, Jesus doesn't help us get rid of it. Anyway, so because we were gone the week before Christmas, we decided we're going to leave this stuff up until after January 1st. So January 2nd, I take off work because we have too much crap. And it takes a lot. And I've got these shelves in my garage. We store all of our Christmas decorations up there. And now I've put a moratorium, no more buying any sort of Christmas stuff because we filled the shelves. So I said, I'm going to stay home, I'm going to help. So we do the bins, we get them up on the shelves. I walk back in the house, says, okay, we're done. And Rhonda goes, well, now the hard part. I said, excuse me? She said, we got to clean the house. I said, don't they have people you can pay to do that? She goes, no, we're cleaning the house today. I said, all right, what do you want me to do? She said, well, first I want you to clean the kitchen counters. I said, all right. So I go to grab the sponge, and she says, hang on. What are you gonna do? I said, wipe down the counters? She goes, no. You do Mr. Clean first. You scrub the counters down with Mr. Clean. and then you go back with the stone polishing and go over the counters. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I do Mr. Clean, I get the stone polishing, she comes back into the kitchen, and on the center aisle, she looks down and she starts to pick up crumbs. And she's like, did you clean this? Now I have two responses going through my head. Response number one is yes, which that makes me look like a horrible cleaner.
Yeah.
Or response number two is no, which makes me look, I forgot. So I said, no, I forgot. She goes, oh, that's okay, I forget sometimes too. Right? Breathe a sigh of relief. And she said, well, I said, what do you want me to do next? And she says, we need to sweep the floors. Cool. I can sweep floors. So I'll go get the broom. I start sweeping. She said, no, not there. You gotta sweep where I have already started vacuuming. Now we're talking about hardwood floors. And she's vacuuming them. And she said, you need to follow where I vacuum. And I'm like,
Sucking up the dog hair, y'all. If you sweep dog hair, it just floats.
okay, whatever. Anyway, I'm like, why am I sweeping if you're vacuuming? Right? I just couldn't get my head around it. And so I sweep, and after she vacuums, and then I think I'm done, and she goes, no, now you gotta Swift. I've been calling it Swift, and I just think Taylor Swift is in my head all the time. Anyway, she said, you gotta Swift. So I go get the Swiffer. She goes, not that Swiffer. I said, what's wrong with this Swiffer? She goes, it doesn't have this cleaning solution that you could squirt out of it. I said, I don't even understand. At this point in time, I'm like, just befuddled. And I said, I don't understand why we're doing this. And then she looks and she says, just trust me. Just trust. And when I got done with the floor, she goes, oh, your floors look so beautiful. I'm like, thank you. Like, 5 years old, my mom just gave me a compliment. But what happens is, in Christianity, I have a point to this story. I didn't just make it. The problem with Christianity is we have to get intellectually behind that there are some, and we'll get to it, not today, but we'll get to the fact that intellectually you can believe there's a God. You can get there. But at some point, you do have to just trust. And say, I don't understand, God, why you did X, Y, and Z, why you made me do vacuum, broom, Swift, but you did. And sometimes when we get down to, especially Genesis chapters 1 and 2, you go, I don't fully understand, and sometimes you have to accept by faith. And when we get to the point that Tim Keller says, because Jesus rose from the dead, everything's all right. There's a big jump of faith. So we talk a lot about these leaps of faith, and the world actually kind of criticizes us for the fact that we don't come, and that we don't come to him both with intellectual aspects and faith. So let me ask this question, because we're going to study 7 questions that continue to plague mankind on the concept of God and faith. So tell me, so we talked a little bit about it. So one of the questions we have is scientific, right? What other questions do people have about faith? If you're arguing with somebody about whether or not there's a God, especially if there's a God in your faith, what kind of pushback do you get? Tragedy.
How could God allow that?
That's going to be, that may take us a whole Sunday. It's huge. The question in there is, either he's all powerful and not good, or he's all good and not powerful. Because he's not stopping stuff. Right? Or what else?
Historic.
What do you mean by that, Brian?
Some people are just ignorant of the amount of history that provides evidence.
Okay.
I think a lot of that history is exactly what turns people away from Christianity as well. I look at my family and they look at all the tragedies in the faith over the centuries.
Call them bad Christians. Ron and I went to a Christian liberal arts school called Evangel University. Our mascot was called the Crusader.
Yeah.
they've now changed it. I guess they got woke. And they decided that's probably not a really good mascot, the Crusader. Did some bad stuff. What else?
Social.
What do you mean?
It's kind of 2 and 3, but I mean, just put together in a way, but I mean, just social norms and customs of the past, not that's accepted and appreciated today.
Is this a list of arguments against it?
This is the list of arguments, that would come against faith in God and Christianity.
Okay. Their explanation is the Big Bang. They believe in primordial soup. They believe in evolution. They don't believe in the historic reality of the resurrection.
Okay.
The existence of other religions.
Yeah,
Exclusivity.
Yeah, the exclusivity of it.
What about the Aborigines?
Well, that's gonna be point. Number 1, we'll talk about. Anything else? So we're gonna go through 7 questions. Number 1, there can't just be one true religion. Not possible. Number 2, how can a good God allow the, or worse, cause suffering? Number 3, Christianity is a straitjacket. It takes away our liberty and our freedom. Number 4, the church is responsible for so much injustice. Number 5, how can a loving God send people to hell? That's a sobering one. My wife and I have 2 sons that are not following Christ. That thought permeates our mind almost every day. Number 6, science has disproved the existence of God. And number 7, you can't rely on the Bible. That'll be a deep one when we get into it. So let's do number 1. That's probably all we're gonna have time to study today. Can't be just one true religion. The thought is that religions are exclusive is so narrow that it's dangerous. Right? That there's only truly one way. The most divisive thing in the entire scripture, go through your entire Bible, there's one statement that is so divisive. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father but through me. Game changer. When Jesus utters that, it changed everything. And it's tough, right? My 3 best friends, one was Catholic, he's now converted to the light. I'm joking. I have a high degree of
Sarcasm.
No, not sarcasm. I have respect for the Catholic Church, is why we have this book today. Anyway.
I can always delete the video. Keep going.
That's all right. As long as Jeff Warren doesn't see what I'm doing today. But the other one is Jewish, the other one's Muslim. Man, you want to talk about some interesting discussions? I always say a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian walk into a bar, right? It starts the joke. But if I sit there, especially my Jewish and Muslim brothers, if I sit there and tell them, only one way, we got it right. What's the hard part of saying that?
They don't.
But we can't even agree. There's denominational churches all around us right now. Right? Go name them. They're right here. You probably passed several of them come to church. We can't even agree what's right. So people are going, why do you Christians think that you've got it down? My Jewish buddy calls us crazy Christians. Right? Because if we go back to Tim Keller's point, is really, you believe that God sent his son to die, and he died, and he rose again, and then that makes everything good? That's crazy. And then if we say, no, that's the only way, the exclusivity is huge. Alistair McGrath, in the History of Atheism, said this: the 20th century gave rise to one of the greatest and most distressing paradoxes in human history, that the greatest intolerance and violence of that century was preached by those who believed religion caused intolerance and violence. Let me just let that resonate for a minute. Right, so part of the problem that we have is that we've talked about history, whoever said historical, I can't remember. The concept here is that you go back and you look, really, you think you guys got it right? look at all the intolerance and the violence and the things that you cause. And that really is what is right. So there's three things that happen as we close. First off, how do you deal with that? Well, people try to outlaw it. Just outlaw religion. Make it non-accessible. You go back through whether it's communism, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, that you can't practice religion. Right? You're doing it even today, even our enlightened society, people are practicing in quiet. This wouldn't happen. We'd be in a living room somewhere with the doors shut and the windows shut because somebody would persecute us for doing what we're doing today. So countries have tried to outlaw it. Does that work? Mm-mm.
Makes it grow.
It actually makes it grow faster. Korea, 30 years ago, was 1% Christian. Now it's over 40%. China, they say, they haven't actually got the stats down yet, is probably even surpassing that. Right? If you think about the early church, it started with 12 guys. And it exploded. Wayne was showing me a book that he's reading about the Apostle Paul and his journeys. You ever look at what he did? Holy mackerel. That's and it wasn't like he had cars or planes, right? And he took the word to the world. Sometimes I think, and especially, and you're going to hear me get on soapboxes a lot, but in the American church, we've gotten so comfortable that we don't realize persecution actually makes us better. And we're going to talk about rights at some point, but take away the rights. We don't care. Christians, we don't have any rights. Do you understand that? You have no rights as a Christian because you now are a slave to Jesus Christ. And that's the only right you have. So the persecution of the church actually can cause it to expand. Number two, condemn it. Make fun of it. Make fun of religion. Make fun of your belief of God. My Jewish buddy and I are really good at making fun of each other's religion. The other day we had lunch and I ran into a couple that I knew, and I told him, I said, go get the car. I'll be out in a minute, so I'll talk to these people. So he goes, he gets the car, and my car. And I walk out, and the valet's there, and I said, did he tip you? The valet goes, no. I said, he's Jewish. I said, he's Jewish. And my buddy goes, I heard that. I said, okay, well, you didn't tip him. What are you doing? Anyway, so we have a tendency to take and say, well, we're going to condemn that you really don't see the whole truth. Right? How in the world can one religion or one belief see the whole truth? It's like the blind man who's trying to describe an elephant. Right? He can describe certain parts of it as he feels it, but he can't describe the elephant. And that's the argument of condemning our belief, is that, well, wait a minute, you can't see the whole truth. There's no way. You can see this part, but you can't see everything. And then keep it private. This is the most dangerous things that are going on, right? If you outlaw it, it'll grow. You condemn it, you can get defensive. If you do the you be you, I'm not going to worry about what you believe. That's fine. Just believe what you believe. And that is one of the biggest dangers that we can have, is that you can just believe what you want to believe, but keep it private. Right? You want to worship the solar system, worship it. You want to worship animals, worship them. You want to worship a God that we can't see or feel or touch, worship him. You want to believe that some guy died on the cross to save us? Okay, that's fine. You want to believe in anything? Okay. It's all good. Right? And that is, to me, is one of the biggest dangers that we're facing in a society right now. Is that it's just relativism. Whatever you want to believe, you believe. And so as we go through,
absolute truth.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's no absolute truth.
There's no
truth,
absolute
truth is whatever you make it to be.
This is my truth.
Right. It goes back to our first thing, the personal, right? It's personal. I believe what I want to believe.
Absolute truth is your enemy.
Yeah, and we're actually we'll look at that next week. Is this concept of this absolute truth. Our founding fathers didn't do us any help in that regard, by the way, which we'll talk about. They actually screwed it up on absolute truth, because they said we hold these truths. And the truths that they said they held, they were not truths. Right, but this concept, see, I gave you a teaser for next time. But this concept that, hey, there is no absolute truth. Jesus can't be the only way. Are you telling me that if my boys don't accept Christ and follow him, they're gonna go to hell? Cannot happen. I'm just being transparent with you this morning. It's tough. Do you believe it or you don't? So as we go through these, the rest of these, go back. Never mind, hang on. Oh. So we'll start next weekend with how can a good God cause or allow suffering? Start with that. That may take us all day. I hope not, but it might. Because some of you in this class have gone through a lot of suffering. You have. I mean, we've been part of the suffering journeys you've been on. And you may go through suffering. So that's going to be a big one. And then we'll get to some of the rest of them, but at least we'll start next week. So anyway, I told you, you're not going to like this part of the study. But when we're done, you're going to be so excited to hit Romans. I actually had lunch with Jeff a few weeks ago, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I told him I was going to do Romans. He said, "You think you can get it done in a year?" And I said, "Well, I thought so." He goes, "Nah, we'll see." Just to let you all know, we're very excited to be back. This has been a journey for us. You know, I teach 2 classes. We were at a precipice where we were trying to decide, do we just go down to 1? Rhonda was like, let's go down to 1. And then really miraculously, she came to me one day and said, God's spoken to me and you need to teach both classes. So it was I haven't shared that story with you all, but it really is how we ended up. And then Wayne and I met later and I said, okay, I'm gonna do both. Because we love you guys. And I was like, and we love the other class. And I was like, what are we gonna do? And so we came to this decision. We're very excited. Glad to be back, glad for this study, and thank you, Wayne.
Welcome back.